Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a new mini-series which after today I plan on releasing every single Tuesday. And what this series is going to include is a breakdown of each Premier League team just before the Christmas break, and it's sort of going to contain who I think currently the best player at the club is, then who I think the best under 23 player at the club is, and then a one to watch from the club as well. So sort of three categories, and I will just start off this series by saying the one to watch player can be any age. It's just a player that I sort of think, maybe hasn't really done or lived up to his potential yet, and I feel could go on and do big things. Or it could obviously still be a youngster that you haven't really heard of yet, might be in the academy, someone that I think could sort of go on and do big things. So, before we get started on today's series, or sort of the mini series that I'm going to be releasing here, I will reiterate, or I will say that this took me a long time to prepare. So, if you could please leave a like on the video, I'd really appreciate it, and obviously sub if you are new. So, I intend on doing 5 teams per episode, guys. However long that takes, I don't know. But so roughly going to be about 4 episodes per mini series, and obviously we're starting with the Premier League here. So we're going to click on into Arsenal to start off with. So you can see just here, this is how all of the pages will look. So I have the best current player, in my opinion, is going to be Gabriel. He is obviously one of the centre backs. He has a great sort of centre back partnership now with Saliba, and obviously with Raya. That the whole defence sort of developing into a potential Premier League winning defence. And in my opinion, I think he's been definitely one of the best players at Arsenal this season. Now you will notice that obviously having a look at the other two players, for example like Saka, he obviously is up there as one of the best current players as well. However, he fits into the under 23 category, which is why I went with that. There'll be no doubles or crossovers in these teams, guys, so I wouldn't have Saka as the best current player and the best current under 23. Just wouldn't really work, and kind of defeats the purpose of the video. So I do try and include, multiple choices. So speaking more a bit about Gabriel, why the reason I think he's one of the best at the minute is because not only do they have a good amount of clean sheets already in the league, which obviously he's contributed to massively, he has been such a big threat from set pieces, as you can see from this photo. Recall back to near the start of the season when they played Spurs. You Spurs fans won't like it, but obviously Arsenal won 1-0 due to set piece, and sort of the whole start of the season, really, set pieces was such a big thing for Arsenal when obviously Odegaard was fit. And then he got injured, and then they kind of slowed down a bit. But he's back now, so hopefully, for Arsenal fans, they'll be back on that sort of set piece, just phenomenon when they just felt like they were scoring every corner. And obviously, Gabriel's he's got to be in there, and I think he's been one of the best so far this season. So moving on to Saka, don't really need too much of an explanation. Saka is world class. He has been for years, and I think that no one really can replicate what he does for Arsenal anyway. Just consistent, very good on So Rare, and obviously plays really well for England. And yeah, not really too much else to say. You guys know Saka's a brilliant player and definitely their best under 23 asset. Yeah, probably for a long time. But with that being said, the one to watch I've got down is Ethan Nwaneri. I believe that's how you say his name. I could be wrong, but oh well. And I've got on screen here his finish, obviously against Nottingham Forest to make it 3-0, I believe, at the time. And it was so. Yeah, obviously I'm not an Arsenal fan. I don't watch every single game, but from what I've seen of him, he reminds me so much of the person who assisted him in a way. So obviously Sterling's played it into him and he's finished it, and the way he's finished it, the way that sort of young, sort of fresh, raw talent, it just reminds me of a player like Sterling when he's coming into the Premier League and just confident. I think that's the main thing. Obviously their play styles are are very different, but I just mean in that his persona and the way he carries himself is just he just looks very confident, and that's what you want to see, especially if you're an Arsenal fan. You when they get on the ball, you don't want to be thinking, "Oh, he's young, or he might mess up." He just looks very confident on the ball, and that's what fills me with confidence. To put him as a player, as one to watch at Arsenal. So we'll see how he progresses, and we'll see, yeah, how his career develops for sure. So moving on, then we've got Aston Villa. Now will say, again, I'm not an Aston Villa fan, but I have watched, I want to say every Aston Villa game this season, so I have quite a good knowledge on Aston Villa. Obviously owning a few of their cards myself. And yeah, so the best current player is definitely got to be Youri Tielemans. Now, I will say that might be a little bit biased from me because I loved him at Leicester, but I think it's hard to argue many other players, because the only other player I might argue is the player who is the best under 23 asset for me, and that's Morgan Rogers. So speaking about Tielemans, I popped here a little picture of him taking a corner because he just seems to be. He's got 4 assists this season. They might all be corners, honestly. I feel like his corners are just so perfect. Like the way he delivers them, the way he's whipping it into the box, and obviously you've got the likes of Konsa and all the like Pau Torres and people like that. Onana mainly is the one scoring from them. Just got big tall players that can score from a great delivery, so they're lucky they have a player like Tielemans who can just be, creating them chances. And we have a little look at the stats here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys could probably see it a bit better. But yeah, he's already got 4 assists, as I said. Expected assists pretty low considering the amount of assists he's actually got, and 7 big chances created, I think is pretty good as well. So yeah, Tielemans been playing a lot of football as well, so could potentially be rested soon, but especially it's kind of hard for them because obviously Onana's just got injured as well. So yeah, and then obviously Morgan Rogers. If you don't know, then he's the man that created the Cole Palmer celebration. But yeah, got his first England call up. That was due to injuries, but it's a long time coming. He's been in the under 21s and things like that. And I think he is the so obviously managers have sort of fallen into this new like Bayern Leverkusen way of playing, where you got three defenders at the back, you got the wing backs and things like that. And I feel like Morgan Rogers is the perfect player in behind the striker. Like he's set an example of like how to play that role, as sort of the support striker, like sort of creating the chances, if that makes sense. So like he's not necessarily going to be the guy scoring the goal, but a lot of the players going through him. A player who I think is very similar to him, who is fantastic as well, is João Pedro. But obviously João Pedro's scoring a bit more than Rogers is, so maybe that's something that Rogers sort of is going to work on in his game a bit more, try and maybe finish some of the opportunities he does get. But yeah, I mean the ceiling, like I said, there's a reason he's the best under 23 at this club right now, in my opinion, and that's just because he's just everything goes through him, and it feels like they need him on the field for 90 minutes, like at all times. And like the fact that he is being like, for example, Watkins is getting subbed off like as a priority, like he's higher than Watkins. That says a lot, you know what I mean? Considering Watkins scores so many goals for them. But yeah, and then the one to watch for Aston Villa is Costa Nedeljkovic. Again, I'm not good with names, but yeah. So this is a young right back. He signed from Red Star Belgrade, and I've got the title here. Hey kid, who are you? You're really good, because that's what Akanji and a lot of the Man City boys pretty much came up to him saying when they played against Red Star Belgrade last season. So obviously Aston Villa have taken him on board, and they've got Matty Cash there at the minute. So I'd like to see him play more, and I feel like he will because Matty Cash is not great. So he's sort of one that I'm quite confident that he could, when he does start to get more opportunities, he could be really, really good for Aston Villa. But obviously maybe a bit too early at the moment in his career, but definitely one to watch out for. And I think that's what I mean. I like players like this that are like potential, and also the player in their current position in the first team is not looking too great. So in my opinion, Cash is probably the weakest player in the 11. So yeah, Costa looks like he could potentially, assuming they don't sign anyone else, he could make that position his own. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, so moving on to the third team in the video, then we have got. I'll zoom out a bit. We have got Bournemouth. So best current player, I think most people would be putting Semenyo. Just electric. I remember watching this game. I added the picture of him against Man City. Just class player. Not really much more to say. He's got 4 goals, 4 expected as well, which is the main thing. Sometimes you see like players like this. I'll zoom in again to the stats a little bit so you guys can have a look whilst I talk. But yeah, sometimes you see players at these smaller clubs, or I wouldn't say Bournemouth's a small club, you know what I mean, but they don't spend as much, and they could have like 1 xg but have scored 4, and they're like overperforming their xg, which I don't really like players like. Well, obviously they're still good because they're scoring their chances, but you have to assume that they're going to fall off. Whereas Semenyo, he's, if anything, underperforming his xG, which is crazy considering when you watch him, he's just so good. So definitely one of them players that he either looks like he's gonna play at Bournemouth for a year and then go to like, I don't know, like Newcastle or like Spurs or something like that, a big club, or a bigger club, or he could potentially just be Bournemouth's saving grace, or Bournemouth's like rise to the top, if that makes sense. Obviously they got the likes of like Evan Nilsson as well in there, who has been fantastic so far, ahead of his transfer. And yeah, they sort of look like they're forming quite a nice little sort of bond, which is good for Bournemouth fans, of course. And then the best current under 23. Now, yeah, Milos Kerkez is in there for me because purely based on his obviously in the Euros. He has a lot of like experience with Hungary, being the first pick for the national team. If you're in the under 23s, there's always like it's always a good sign to see that you're doing well at a national level as well, because I feel like that's almost like a bigger indicator for me if they're going to be going, developing well in their career. If you're the best, if you're the best player for your nation in your position, you're obviously considered to be quite good. And the main reason I got him in here as well is obviously 12 starts is pretty good for an under 23. So yeah, a lot of minutes. And he's only going to get better with things like that. And I think that's the main reason I've got him in here, is because he might not be performing crazy at the moment, but trust me, if you're playing 38 Premier League games, like, you're gonna get good quick. You know what I mean? So yeah, then we've got sort of the other end of the spectrum really with Alex Scott. So I think he's a good player. Obviously, we've seen him a little bit last season, scoring this good goal against Spurs. Great on the press. Still relatively young, but he's kind of like opposite to Kerkez in the sense that he can't seem to break the first team. So potentially a player that could move, they could like potentially look to move on, but then I still consider him one to watch because he could go on, move to a championship club and become a top player there. So definitely a player to look into for Sorare wise, if he does get a move, because then he could get first team football and score really well. But yeah, I think Alex Scott is a good player, and that's the reason I'd put him in the one to watch for me. So moving on to the penultimate club of this video, we have got Brentford. Now, you don't know how tempted I was to put Thomas Frank as the best current player. Obviously not a player, but I will start this sheet off by saying that I think oh no, sorry about that. I will start off this video, Oh god, that's ruined my flow. I will start this club off, or Brentford off, by saying I think Thomas Frank is one of the best managers in the league, and I feel like he gets the best out of everyone. So, with that being said, Bryan Mbeumo has to be the best current player because I mean, look at that top goal scorer. I'm sure Brentford fans will love that. Haaland, Salah, and Mbeumo. That is just fantastic, isn't it? Like he's up there with some top company, and he's just on fire. And he doesn't look like he's slowing down. To be honest, he's just one of them players that's always he's sort of always been there as well. Like he scores, and he does well for them. So him and Jan Wisser, definitely up there as just great attacking options for Brentford. And the only reason why I think I put Mbeumo over Wisser is obviously Wisser got a little bit injured. Well, he did get injured, not a little bit, but yeah. Then my best current under 23. Now, I did want to go Carvalho, but he just doesn't look like he's getting the minutes. And Collins has been consistently, he's playing at a pretty consistent level for Brentford right now, and I think he's one of their best average rating performers. Obviously, Brentford defensively isn't insane, and he is a defender. But like same as Milos Kerkez, if you're playing 12, if you're starting every game, you've got 3 team of the weeks as well. You're gonna get there. So I think Nathan Collins is definitely their best current under 23 player, but that could be liable to change because obviously, like I said, Brentford are a great club. They've got some great youngsters and an even better manager. So they've got quite a good stack of under 23 players that they could, develop and become, a higher in the Premier League in the future with for sure. And one of them is Mr. Thiago. So this man has come to the club from Club Bruges, I believe, or the Belgium League, and pretty much I just wanted to highlight. Look at this, like. This is obviously when he played in the Belgium League. I will zoom in. Yeah, you can sort of see his just form and things like that is just fantastic. In the Belgium League, that is, and obviously he hasn't really got his chance yet at Brentford. So pretty much I was just thinking, if he manages to get his sort of foot in the first 11, obviously they got Wisser and Mbeumo, but if he can replicate anything like this, obviously 2 completely different leagues, but I was just thinking, damn, if he does this, he's gonna be good. But yeah, obviously Fabio Carvalho is probably another good shout. Sepp van der Berg is obviously another good shout to go in there, but I've gone with Thiago because I thought he would be a little bit less known, maybe. And I wanted to go for players that perhaps you haven't heard of in the one to watch section. So that's why I've gone with Mr. Thiago. And last but not least for this video, we have got Brighton. Now, their best current player just has to be João Pedro. Honestly, just what a player. Great player. Like I said in the early parts of this video with Aston Villa, he reminds me a lot of Morgan Rogers. However, I feel like he a bit more of a developed Morgan Rogers. Like I think they're both obviously unreal, but I personally rate Pedro slightly above Rogers right now, just because I feel like he's added that goal element to his game. Now, obviously, Pedro's been out of an injury so far this season, but he's back now, and you can just tell like the difference in Brighton when they have Pedro fit and him not being fit. It's just crazy. But yeah, just a crazy good player, definitely their best current player, and obviously under 23 as well. I feel like most of Brighton's team is under 23, so this was very hard to pick. But kind of a no-brainer for Verbruggen. As I touched on earlier in the video, if you're playing for your national team, especially Holland, you're good. So, yeah, Verbruggen, I think, is probably their best under 23 player, or at least their best asset in the under 23 department. Again, quite hard to pick because there's so many good ones, but for me, Verbruggen goes in there. And then the one to watch is Yankubu Minter. Now, definitely he's probably going to be like the most heard of, one to watch in this series. Minter, because obviously he's played in the Premier League and things like that, and he's played in the Eredivisie, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of him. But he's an example of a player who I feel like we definitely haven't seen the best of him, so that's why I wanted to add him. Obviously, we've seen him in pre-season, like sitting down defenders and already doing well. Picked up an injury, so sort of he's kind of, I guess, fighting back to get into the first team, but still so young. Exciting young winger with a lot of pace. And yeah, I just think he's a fantastic player and a great asset to have at Brighton right now. So definitely one to watch out for. So with that being said, that is the first five Premier League clubs for this little mini series that I'm doing. So today, obviously, I'm releasing this video, and I intend to do the future or all the other teams on a Tuesday. So next Tuesday, you will see the next 5 teams. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. If you're new, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in a future video. Peace.